welcome back to Final Fantasy V. We're in the end game now, and so much about this game and the history of it has dawned on me, certainly in this second half of the game. We've been playing through all of the single-player Final Fantasies. This is our final one of the main series before we start looking at expansions and spin-offs and things like that we will be looking at in the future. Where we left off is our boy, our hero, my favorite character, Galoof, had died. And that was one of the most meaningful character deaths in all of Final Fantasy for me. It was really up there with some of the greats. And it was tough. I felt disconnected from my party. I really did. I haven't enjoyed Bart's too much. Faris, I enjoy. Lenny, kind of fits the role. But we're going to push through that. It hurts, and it should hurt. Like, that's... Honestly, we talked about this a lot in the stream. Is the fact that I feel that way, and it's supposed to feel that way, is good writing. And it also plays into how people feel about, like, when we talk about maybe this character in sort of Final Fantasy XIV should be, maybe he should have died at this point. And people got very upset about that concept, like, oh, you're just killing them for fun. It's like, well, we made it very clear, no, that's not the case. But there's a meaningfulness that I want to experience. There's a darkness and a sadness that I think really comes from great storytelling if it feels appropriate. Not just for willy-nilly's sake. But we'll put that discussion to the side, and you can find that video on the channel. Let's talk about where we were. Our goal is pretty simple. In order to defeat Exdeath once and for all, as Exdeath has summoned the Void and is using the Void to crush every major city in the world, we have this really epic cutscene where Exdeath summons the Void, and it just basically travels around to the Moogle camp, to all the cities, and just eradicates them off the map, leaving us with a sort of 50-50 map. Geographically, it's a new map, but a lot of places have now vanished. To gather the legendary weapons in order to eventually overcome Exdeath. And in order to do that, we have to find 4 tablets. Now, one thing I'm not sure of is whether you actually need all 4 tablets, because all 4 gets you all 12 legendary weapons, but each tablet on its own, once you get it, can give you 3 legendary weapons. So do you just want to get a couple and then you can go and fight Exdeath? I'm not sure, but we're in the end game now. So we had all these clues of where to go. We tackled the pyramid, done that, and my mindset here, because obviously I'm not familiar with the game, was that we need all 4 tablets. So it was only after we got the 3rd tablet, I think, people were like, why aren't you going and getting the legendary weapons? I was like, because we haven't got all 4 yet. And I'm like, well, you can go and get them now. And I was like, well, that makes no sense, because in my mind, the 12 legendary weapons will be in a dungeon, so why would we clear a dungeon multiple times? And they're like, well, you get stronger weapons, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, this is what we'll do. Let's talk difficulty, real briefly. It's well known amongst knowers of the franchise that Final Fantasy V was not released in the West, and the main reason was they believed it was going to be too hard for Western gamers. Probably true. Probably true, actually. Because this game really heavily ramps up its difficulty and just kicks you in the balls constantly. Not in a very cheap way. I talked about this a bit with Final Fantasy III, where you just sort of... They kind of know you can be mega over-leveled, so they just throw in a bunch of spells that just kill you. Now, FF5 kind of does that. I think it's called Encircle or something like that, and if that spell lands, your character is just gone from the fight. That's it. There's no counter to it, there's no Isunaing it, there's no resource you can use, your character is just gone. And you're like, oh, okay, that kind of sucks. That kind of sucks. So there is a bit of that, and there's things like level 5 death, which we're used to in all Final Fantasies. But generally speaking, everything you're going to fight now has a counter to it, which is very, very interesting. Like, if you just have to learn what the enemies are doing. Now, I've said this many times, and at the danger of repeating myself, I do not think I would have beat this or stuck with this game if I was a kid. Maybe if it was the only game I got every 6 months, yeah, maybe I probably would have stuck with it, or I would have read a magazine for some help, which is what we did when these games came out. But looking at it now, and now with, like, you know, nearly 40 years of gaming experience, yeah, I can figure out what the hell's supposed to happen. But generally speaking, some of this is really brutal. I think the best example of this is the Magic Towers. So the Magic Towers is something that unlocks, which allows you have to scale the towers twice. And in classic Final Fantasy style, it splits the party in 2. So it will divide the party. You get to choose who wants to go where. I will admit I got Faris and Lenny mixed up here because they weren't facing me and they have similar hair for some reason, but obviously because they're sisters. And I got them mixed up. So the party I actually wanted to go with, which was a strong melee and a healer, or a strong caster and a weaker melee, Didn't work out, but that was fine because the immense, robust, fantastic job system of Final Fantasy V means that that doesn't matter. You can swap them to whatever you want to do at any point, and if you swap them to that role, they can utilize every single high-level spell you've collected at this point. So that was pretty good. Here's the twist that makes this tough. One side is anti-caster, massively anti-caster, and one side is anti-melee. Now, I kind of cheesed this. My casters are so powerful with Faraga and Thundaga, etc., that I was able to kill the anti-caster enemies. And the way they worked is if they didn't die and you cast a spell on them, they would just kill you. They would do like 999 damage, or they would hit you repeatedly for several thousand, and your characters have just over 1,000 HP, so you would die. But they were capable of one-shotting the enemies with the gear I had, so I was able to sort of get around it that way. And I was like, okay, I can kind of manipulate this system. But I died a lot, because obviously I went in, I would like, oh, there's 3 enemies, I'm going to AoE them, and they would just wipe me out. I died several times in this tower. Eventually, I worked my way to the top, and then swapped to the other team. Okay. And as I worked my way up there, dealing with similar things, but I'm a bit more accustomed to what the tower offers, wiping, go again, redo, go again, finally got to the top, where they just flat out were like, okay, you just can't cast spells during this fight. Into magic, I bet? The Minotaur. Wait, I can't even cast magic? That's really tough, and I can imagine not being someone who recently stocked up heavily on, say, high potions and things like that would just be screwed. So I was like, this is really tough. So what should I do here? And it really, this kind of gameplay reinforces their amazing job system. They obviously had so much faith in the job system. They were like, it's fine if the character gets here, because they should have the resources to deal with it without having to just go out and redo the tower. They can do that, but they should be able to just be like, okay, what's better here? And sort of start puzzle solving. So I decided, okay, what I'll do, I simply can't cast spells, even healing spells. So what I'll do, and this enemy hits very, very hard, is, okay, we need some protection. So what I'll do is I'll do sort of a knight, which is a tank role, and a monk to be the more robust DPS output. That will be the plan. I'll go with that. And the monk can, the knight should hopefully be able to mitigate the damage enough to be sort of a less DPS, but and also an off healer with high potions to try and remedy the situation. That didn't work. The monk died in like 2 hits, and I couldn't heal it up. But it turned out I was half right. My knight was able to completely parry and dodge everything this enemy threw at it, to the point where, and it did low damage, but was able to just whittle the health down without taking any damage. I should try rezzing the monk and stuff, but that didn't work. And then I thought, right, what I'll do then is they're likely to make it on the other side, where I had a ninja and a black-white mage, is that they'll probably try and make it so you can't melee it at all, and you'll just die. So I'll swap them both to mages. That'll be the plan once I get past this fight. It leaves you no time. Like, there's a countdown. You have 7 seconds. So in a panic, I went into the fight, and of course wiped, because it did have mechanics like that. And I was like, okay, I can't deal with this in any way, shape, or form. And so I had to reverse course, and then realized, okay, the timer does pause in the start menu, so I can manipulate it, and went with this setup with double black mages that eradicated the final boss. And that gave me access to Flare and Holy. Interestingly enough, though, Holy does about the same damage as Flare, but is half the mana cost. Mix that with Gold Hairpin, and I can spam Holy pretty endlessly. And I then totally jigged up my party, because I was like, okay, I can really do some weird things here. I had been told by one of the NPCs that using a freelancer, which can use any job, once you've mastered certain jobs, will give you massive stats. So I was like, cool, we can make our guy, we can make Faris a freelancer to use black, white, and something else. But the glam looked terrible. I know that's so bad. The glam looked terrible. But on our exploration to find the underwater cave, we came across something very weird. Is one of the sunken temples was available to enter. And my gaming knowledge kicked in. It's like, they wouldn't have made this unless there was something in there. So investigation, we found Gogo from Final Fantasy VI. This was amazing, and Gogo is a boss. And Gogo, here's the thing. a lot of people like to think something, and I don't know the truth. I'll just put it this way. Something is bigger than what it is. And we see this a lot with movies. Like a movie that has some sort of mystery to it. So it could be Pulp Fiction, what's in the briefcase. Could be whether they put the weapons down at the end of Snatch and does he answer the phone. Things like that. And then really Get Out is a great example of so many theories that go into the construction of the narrative. It goes a bit bigger. My personal feeling is simplest answer is often the right solution. And this is just the devs having a bit of fun. I think that's all it is, because Go-Go mimics everything you do. So that means if you attack Go-Go with melee, he just kills you with melee. And if you attack him with a spell, he just casts Meteor on you and eradicates the party. So I was like really digging deep mechanically, way overthinking it. It's like, what can I do here? Can I do something tricky with Reflect? And sometimes that worked, because sometimes Go-Go would start casting Holy at me. So I was like trying to tickle him with small spells, then he would cast Holy, I would reflect it back, I put Reflect Rings on the party and cast Reflects on others. Can I cast the spells on myself so that they then reflect onto Go-Go, and therefore it doesn't quite count as a direct attack, so maybe he's going to cast the spell on himself because he's mimicking me. I was trying all these different things, and ultimately you're really overthinking it. Now, I'm aware, because some people educate me on this, you can technically kill Go-Go, but in my efforts to be like solving it, I was like, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to like cast Shell on everybody, because if you don't attack Go-Go, he doesn't do anything. I'm going to be like shelling everybody, and then I'll protect them, and then I'll put Reflect on, and then maybe I'll put somebody into defensive stance so that they mitigate damage more, and then I'll reflect something onto them and do all this kind of stuff. And in the process of like setting this up, the fight just ended. He just goes, you've found the true art of mimicry is to do nothing at all. Sort of a Matthew Broderick War Games ending. So I accidentally got Go-Go, which unlocked the Mimic class, which is better looking glam-wise and transmog-wise than the Freelancer. Basically the same thing, but gets 3 abilities instead of 2. And looks cooler. So we've changed Faris over to a Mimic because it just looks better. That's my only justification for this. It just looks better. I have really nothing else to add to this. At this point, I was lost. The dungeons are very hard. I don't want to spend too long on them. They're very, very hard. Got to fight Leviathan, which was very simple, actually. A lot of puzzles, a lot of redoing, because there's invisible holes in the floor and things like that that make you redo the areas. From very awful enemies like shield dragons, which are just the worst thing in the universe, and zombie and all this kind of stuff. Worked my way through there. But ultimately, accidentally, while trying to find the underwater place, which has a bad description. It says it's underwater but engulfed by flame. And I was like, so there must be something pretty obvious in the underwater area. This is how we ended up finding Go-Go, is I was just swimming around the ocean, like, looking for things. I found models of, like, Easter Island heads and things like that. And couldn't find anything. But now I've got a very powerful team that's working together. I've got like double black mage and things like that. So I'm looking around as to what to find. And stumbled across an entrance, went in, including I found the statistician. In Guido's Sunken Temple now, there's a statistician in there that tells you how many battles you've done and jobs you found and things like that, which was cool. But like then I eventually had to go and ask. And the cave, the castle that's been overtaken by the Chancellor and stuff, gives you clues as to where to go with the tablet. So I was like, I'll go back there. And then it dawned on me, it's like, this is where the legendary weapons are. So I was like, I walked up, it's like, oh, okay, you just turn the tablets and you can just choose your legendary weapons to pick. So I have equipped them all with legendary weapons. They have them. The one of them buffed holy damage for the white mage. And I think my holy now hits for nearly damage cap. It's nearly 9999. It's nearly there. The other one for the black mage is the Magus Rod. Buffs elemental damage. It's alright. It's nowhere near as powerful as the holy. The bow that I had for my ranger actually had less DPS than the one I already had, but it has like buffs to strength and agility. So I was like, it's probably better, but it's hard to tell stats-wise as to what it's do, but I'm sure it is better. So I've equipped them with those to get ready for the final temple. But this does mean we're in the end game now. My main thoughts on the progress of the game at this point is Final Fantasy V, unless it has a diabolically bad ending, is one of the best Final Fantasies ever made. The storytelling is phenomenal. It's really good. And I'm not just talking about Galoof. It's more a case of if you go into this blind, it constantly throws twists and turns at you. It really does. It's massive. It's such a huge undertaking with a lot of care and a lot of delicacy taken to it, revisiting areas, having mysteries all the way through it that you forget about. There's so many of them. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Lots of that going on. Warnings from the NPCs. They've also done it so that like you don't have to find an obscure NPC to know what to do next. It's very clear. It's not got a Final Fantasy 3 problem. It's like, I really don't know what to do, and they fell onto like Sid to just keep telling you where to go. It's like, okay, if you're stuck, go back to Sid. Stuck, go back to Sid. They don't have that. Very quickly after a big event happens, it kind of just points you where you're supposed to go next. So the pacing works out really well. The gear acquisition is really interesting. It's well worth checking every chest. We don't have that FF2 issue of just empty rooms all the time. FF4 is a much more streamlined experience, is what I'd say. I'm happy that party members aren't just going and leaving. In fact, in 5, they've done it so that, and this will be more in my conclusion, is they've made it so that, like, if party members disappear, it's for a storytelling and narrative purpose, you know, and then they're very quickly going to reestablish you and make it work. So, right up there. Not only, and mechanically, the job system is great. I'm going to see how far they go with, like, trying to up the ante with the difficulty. But man, what an experience. So I think our next video is probably going to be the ending, and then another adventure awaits. So stay tuned for that, guys.